Nigeria's federal government, states, and local governments have been talking to a financial analyst, Wale Oluwo. Thank you so much, Wale, for sticking around. Now, we're talking about fiscal federalism, that we've veered off that part, that perhaps that's the place that we could start.
Yeah, absolutely, sir. And there is a strong advocacy to this effect, that Nigeria should be moving more towards fiscal federalism. But honestly, I don't know what...
Okay, what would this scenario be? We'll go back to the path of fiscal federalism. What would a sharing formula look like?
Look, fiscal federalism is not limited to sharing formula. What it does is to start from the basics. There's resources in every state and every region of this country. There's no doubt about that. And as long as those resources are there, and the military had made a law during their era that every resource under the soil of Nigeria belongs to the federal government. That is the beginning of this sharing controversy as far as I'm concerned. We are not baking. We are not increasing revenue. We just rely on crude oil and gas as a basis for sharing money. It's not supposed to be like that.
Well, there's money from the Federal Inland Revenue Service, money from customs, there are other sources of significant revenue coming in.
Absolutely. But that is still nothing compared to what we have under the soil of Nigeria. And what we have under the soil is not the resources that we really develop it. What we develop it the most is your human development capacity. How much have you been, how seriously have you been in terms of productivity, your human capital, are they educated, are they IT compliant, is there research and all those things. Those are what matter. So if you talk about fiscal federalism, you are not just going to talk about we take money from the south because they have oil and they will begin to share it. No, fiscal federalism means states will have control over resources in their territory. And when they bring out those resources, they give a percentage of it to the center. It can be 30%, it can be 40%, it can be 50%. I think during the First Republic, they add up to 50%. Every region controls its resources and uses it to develop the region. And it worked. That's the truth. But now, fiscal federalism also presupposes that you tax the institutions and the individuals in your territory and apply that taxation to develop that territory. That is the beginning of fiscal federalism. And that is what can bring back the competition that we used to see in the First Republic, where when a region is doing well, the other region wants to up its game and see how it can also attract investment.
As far as taxation is concerned, I know Lagos State is really, at least Lagos State and one or two other states, are really taking it very, very seriously.
Yeah, with respect to Nigeria, Lagos State can survive without federal allocation. That's the truth. But so many states in Nigeria can also survive without federal allocation. If we abolish that law that was put in place by the military, that did not motivate these states to begin to look within their environment and see what they can make money out of. Now, look at Ondo State, for instance, sitting on a large deposit of bitumen. It's not being extracted. Look at the entire Middle Belt zone. A lot of precious minerals under the soil. Look at the Chad Basin and the rest of them. Look at the north. Look at the east. We have these things, but only a dumb state will use its limited resources now to go and bring out whatever is under its soil, and then the federal government will say, thank you.
Well, they won't be handing everything to the federal government.
No, the law today says even if you bring it out, it belongs to the federal. So
everything. You
can only get 13% derivation because it's found in your state. So as a state governor, I'm not going to use my money to bring out anything, no matter how valuable, until we begin to address those things. So it is not enough for the governors to say, let us share this revenue in this way. The advocacy from the governors should be that let us see how we can make every state to be productive, so that you don't need to rely on the center. It should be the other way around. It should be the center waiting for the states to make remittances to it. Not that the states are looking at the center to collect handouts in order to go and develop their state. No, it's not like that. Because
it shouldn't be like that.
It shouldn't be like that. I mean, that is not a good way to practice.
But is that feasible here? Do you see that working here? I mean, we know we have a very tricky political environment, and these kind of issues usually drag on and become too contentious to be solved.
It can work. It only has to be drilled down to the issue of personal interest. Let me tell you, this new allocation formula, although I said it that it's not the comprehensive approach, but it's the starting point. This new one, recommended by the Babatunde Raji Fashola Committee under the Nigerian Governors Forum. What it does is that it will go to the National Assembly for debate. And mind you, the governors have already seen the attraction. 42% comes to the states. It's increased revenue for them. So what they will do is, and you know, a lot of them, put all these people in the parliament, senate, and the rest of them. They can influence them to support this kind of arrangement. And when we do this, then we should begin to go back to other areas that can enhance fiscal federalism.
If this is done, like you said, if the governors succeed with this proposed new sharing formula, and 5 years later, assuming they decide that okay, let's now review it every 5 or 7 years, not 12 years, wouldn't that mean that when they sit down after then, they will be looking at an increase?
Increase in what?
In what goes to the state? What goes to them? Or would it remain that? Or what's the purpose of a review in the first place?
Let me clarify that, Esther. I said it earlier that revenue should be proportional to responsibility. We can excuse the federal government then because it was doing a lot of things in the federation, and it must necessarily have access to the largest chunk of the revenue to be able to drive those utilities. In addition to foreign affairs, in addition to the military and security that the federal government was handling. Now, the justification is no longer tenable.
But I know the federal government will put up an argument. For you, what could they use as a main point in defense? Why they should get a lion's share?
If this revenue allocation is not quickly implemented now, right? And they allow the federal government, they allow another 5 to 6 to 7 years. The federal government will be able to have that argument. As we speak today, the federal government cannot make that argument. Because the question will be put. The federal government is having the largest resources in the federation. How is it being managed? Before now, we used to spend a lot of it on also all kinds of debt management, subsidy, recurrent expenditure, even up to now.
I'm looking at the scenario where the federal government will put on the table a very valued argument. You ask them what have they done, they'll come up with a host of reasons and perhaps along with proof of what they've done with their share of the money.
Well, we've seen it. They don't even need to come out with any excuse. We've already seen it. A lot of it goes to subsidy support.
Which they will say has benefited the population.
There's no problem about that. We're not saying the federal government is not entitled to a large chunk of the revenue because it has huge responsibility.
Okay, are you saying that they should get a larger chunk? Even if it's by just 2% ahead of the states?
No. That will not be scientific. We are saying what should be the responsibilities of the states.
And that will not determine how much you go.
Let's put it this way. We have 3 lists in the federation. You have the exclusive list, which are those things that the federal government can do. You have the concurrent list, which the states and the federal government can do. And they have the residual list. When you propose this kind of revenue allocation, you must go back to the exclusive list and take away a lot of those things that are exclusively the responsibility of the federal government. Those ones that can be devolved to the state, you devolve them to the states. That is how these things can work. It's not going to just be mathematical formula, take the highest and take the lowest. No. Let's shift the responsibilities because the question is who is more competent.
Okay.
And having a lot of slack time or slack resources to be able to focus on those responsibilities. This is a newsroom in channels. The head of news is more likely to know the problems here than the managing director, who probably is somewhere now. Okay,
so if it is saying that the states have more responsibility,
then the more resources goes to them.
Whether or not at the end of the day it becomes higher than what the federal government gets.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It should be mutually agreed. Nigeria is one. If they say more resources to the state, it does not mean somebody is stealing the money away. We're just saying let us put the money where there will be more attention and there will be more efficient utilization of the resources. And that is how a federal system can operate.
Now, hopefully all of that will go well. We have between now and December, the committee is going to look at that and they're going to throw it open to the public and hopefully it won't be too...
no, it will be controversial because even as we speak, the Sovereign Wealth Fund is controversial, the SS Crude account is controversial, they are in court, there is out of court discussions and all those stuff. Anything money will create problem. We know that. Okay, but we must put the interest of the nation first in order
Perhaps
to
that's
know.
why we're having that public hearing.
And something must be avoided there, and it's very important. to say we are federal government, they are state. No,
Yes,
Nigeria is
okay.
one. We are all working for the same goal.
Okay. All right, Wale, we're going to have to leave it there. We're completely out of time now. Thank you so much. We'll keep an eye on this, and if we see any development, perhaps you could come back.